Hello and welcome to We Will Manage, the podcast exploring the weird and wonderful world of work. We're two young professionals figuring out our careers one conversation at a time. Today, we'll be diving into the ins and outs of interviews.
So, stay tuned to hear what interviewers consider to be red flags, how jumping on a quick call is a bad sign, and the importance of your shirt buttons. I took a video on my way down the hill because that's where I took my video. I think it was last week or the week before, where I was like skipping. I was like, "Wow, can't wait to get online." And I took a video when I was going down the hill today and I said,
Not feeling it
on the
today.
subject of being raw and having real conversations. Today, I'm not feeling very motivated and I'm not feeling very inspired and I'm a little bit tired. So, but I'm still looking forward to chatting to my bestie about stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Also,
Yeah.
one last thing.
No, it doesn't have to be the last thing.
This can go on to the episode. We can put it in wherever we want. I'm just going to share my screen for a second.
Okay.
If I figure out how. Entire screen.
Share.
Makes things easier.
All right, yeah.
There we go. Ooh, we've got a bit of screenception here. And now I'll open up my mini board. Let's just, this is a bit, fourth wall, but this is the preparation for our episodes, right? We're going to go to episode 4, which is the one that Alba, Bean, has prepared.
Yes.
I'm going to take a look at the podcast outline. Right? Okay. And now we're going to go to episode number 5, the one I've prepared. And we're going to go
Where
to the
there is
podcast
one card.
outline.
There's one card. Okay, well, in my defense...
No need to defend. I'm the one that should defend myself.
No, well, the thing is... so in mine there was about 80 cards, and in Saoirse's there was 1.
It's just because you have Milanote Pro, that's all it is.
Also true. Yeah, that is a very good point. No, but I always feel, I've always been like this when I'm presenting, that I feel like if I don't have it all written down, I'm just going to forget to say things. I'm just not going to, they're not going to. And then very often I don't even, when we did the networking one, I didn't even look at what I'd, prepared. But then when I look back on it, I had pretty much said, it's kind of a way where it's how I plan what I'm going to say, and then if I actually need
Mentally
to look at it or
even.
not. Exactly.
I've always been like that. For an exam. You never actually use it, but you've learnt it by making the cheat sheets.
By making the cheat sheets, exactly. I would always do that. I would always write it out as a way of studying. So that's just my way of doing things. Also, for those listening, I am finally, I'm in a different location today, but it's finally my own location, finally at my house.
We have a slightly different toned wall.
Yes,
It's gone from white to kind of beige.
Beigey yellow to whatever this color is. Yeah, so hopefully this should be most of the time. Today's episode, interviews. Ooh. So how I'm leading it today, and I'm going to ask you, Saoirse, how much experience do you have with interviews before we get started?
Honestly, very little. I've done myself as interviewee, maybe 4 or 5 interviews.
Okay.
And
as the interviewer?
Yeah, I've only led, I think I participated in an interview in my first internship as from the company side, but I wasn't leading the interview. And then at my current company, I have kind of gone in as a second person to have my own little evaluation, but I haven't properly led an interview to choose a hire. I've
just seen
been
it
there
happen.
for kind of a second opinion, or so fairly little, I would say.
Okay. So to start off, I've lost you. Put you here. To start off, we're going to start off with a little game called Interview Ping Pong.
Ooh.
Because we're going to go into this in this episode.
Oh, is this an interview now? Do I need to get nervous?
I am going to ask you some very typical and kind of cringy interview questions. And I want you to give me 2 answers. One, as if it was your 16-year-old self. So 10 years ago. And one...
Ow.
I know, right? We're not 20 anymore. And one as you would answer it now. As the person you are today. So they are hilariously, cringy questions. I found the most. And yeah, let's go. Let's see how it goes. So, question number 1. If you were an animal, what would you be and why? 16-year-old Saoirse.
Okay, back to 16-year-old Saoirse. Funnily enough, I think we used to ask ourselves this as possibly Harry Potter fans for some reason. We used to ask ourselves this. At 16, I know what your answer was. But I don't know mine. I think maybe... Ooh. I know why. Oh my gosh. Okay. Can I give... Okay, I'll give the 16-year-old version first. We can cut out the pauses. I need to talk. I mean, think.
Yeah, there's no... Yeah, exactly. 16-year-old you maybe wouldn't be the best at interviews, but it's fine.
I didn't know myself yet, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's very much things we're going to talk about today.
The first thing that came to mind was some kind of wild cat. Mm-hmm. So, and then I was wondering, is that because of the fierceness? Mm. But I don't think I was very fierce at 16.
But maybe that's why. Because you wanted to feel.
Maybe
fierce.
I wanted to feel a bit more confident, a bit more like I could take anything on. So that's the first thing that came to mind. I'd have to go back and ask my 16-year-old self.
And
then now the first thing that came to mind was a mountain goat.
I love it.
If I were any animal, I would like to be a mountain goat. I think they're quick. They're really stable on their feet. They can kind of figure out any situation on a rocky terrain. And they spend their whole lives in the mountains.
In the mountains, which is your dream, so...
Yeah. So yeah, good. I'd say mountain goat. So maybe I'm not too worried about my fierceness anymore.
Yeah, interesting. What would your worst enemy say about you? 16-year-old Saoirse. Let's be honest, they would probably say something like really horribly untrue because they were jealous. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean the first thing that came to mind was again like she tries too hard. Like she's trying too hard. She's showing off, you know? Mm-hmm. I think
and
maybe
now?
That. And now what would my worst enemy say? Maybe the same.
Interesting.
Maybe the same. I don't know what makes me think that. I think I do often have to tone down how kind of happy I am with my situation and the life I'm living. And I think
because you feel like you're trying to oversell it, or because you're worried people all think that you are trying to oversell it?
Yeah, I think I worry that it sounds like I'm showing off, you know? Because if you're very external to my situation and you're not aware, like friends at home in town, and I say, yeah, I live in Switzerland, I'm an engineer, it can sound very kind of bigged up, you know? Yeah. Oh, I live in the mountains. So I try and tone it down a bit. Yeah. Especially for people that don't know me that well anymore, at least. So I would worry that if somebody isn't that happy with their life situation, that they would maybe say that I do show off, or that I do big up my success.
Interesting. Okay, are you ready for this next one?
Yeah.
Sell me this pen. We don't actually have to do that. I just thought that was a hilarious question.
Oh, anyway, no, I'll do it.
Oh, wait, sorry. I have to show you a pen. Sell me this pen.
Okay. Can I have it?
Yeah, here you go.
I have something for you to sign, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Could you sign that for me?
I feel like... I was going to say, I feel like we're like teenagers again and you're doing one of your magic tricks. I was like, where is this going? Turned out it was a joke.
Hint, you don't have the pen anymore. It's in Switzerland now. How do you do your planning? How do you plan your to-do lists? Do you use your computer? Do you type them out?
I prefer my pen and paper. I've got my diary, paper diary.
Interesting. So you go through a fair amount of pens. You enjoy writing with a pen.
I do enjoy writing with a pen over computer, yes.
Well, then I have the perfect pen for you.
Oh, really?
This pen has been made for the satisfaction that it brings you as you write. So you can feel the grain of the paper really well. And the ink, it's been really thought out for heightening your experience as you bring it to the paper.
I'm sold. What's the brand?
It's
Blank.
We will
manage this podcast.
We will write.
Right. Back to a more serious in quotes question. If you had to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, what number would you choose and why?
Ooh.
16-year-old self.
Okay. How confident was I in my own skin at 16? Maybe a 7.
Okay.
I'd give myself a good old 7.
And why a 7 and not higher or lower?
I think I'm capable of learning a lot. And I think that's very valuable. I'm known for my creativity, and I think that can be helpful in kind of any company situation. Either it's figuring out problems or designing things or whatever. But I don't have any experience yet in any domain. I haven't even gone to university.
Exactly.
So yeah, I wouldn't go any higher, but 7. I'm a valuable asset to your team and I'll learn quickly.
And now?
And now I'm going to go ahead and give you an 8.7. No, I'm going to give you a 9. I'm going to give you a 9. I think I can adapt quickly, and I enjoy figuring out problems, and I think that works in any kind of job and situation. I have good personal skills. I am very empathetic, which can play in my favor or against me. But as this is an interview, I'm going to
favor.
There you go.
Nice. Okay, and last one is: are you more of a leader or a follower?
I think 16. In both ages, I would have said leader.
Nice. I was interested to see what you would say as your 16-year-old self. Yeah. Right. So.
I was just starting. Just starting then, I think.
Yeah.
I definitely think I would have said more of a leader than a follower.
Yeah. I think we've established we probably both of us were pretty leading personalities. Right, so we're going to jump in with the first kind of facet of interviews, which is when you are the interviewee. And off of that, some of the weirdest interview questions that people have been asked are things like, if this job offered no money, would you still want to work here? What's the most dangerous animal you'd be willing to fight? What church do you go to? If I were to go into your room right now, would your bed be made? Oh no.
That's such a good one.
If you could get away with it, would you steal from us? That's somebody that had an interview for Subway. Got asked that question. And what makes a salad a salad? So those are some interesting questions that people get asked as an interviewee. You say you've had 4 or 5 interviews. I have had, I think, 2 interviews in the kind of traditional sense of an interview when you are applying for a job somewhere. We have talked about this before, but my plan was to work for someone else straight out of uni, but because of COVID and quarantine, that didn't happen. So I immediately started working for myself. That means that I didn't do very many interviews. The interviews I did do was while I was at uni, and in summer break, or I had a couple of jobs while I was studying. So then those ones, but then because of the situation, they didn't feel like as high stake as in if you think, now if I was applying for a job and I need a job because to pay bills, etc., it's obviously a lot more high stakes. If I didn't get that internship, and it wasn't the end of the world. So I definitely don't feel like I have the most kind of experience in, like I say, the most classic way of doing an interview. I was thinking a lot about it, and I think it comes down to in a lot of, I think we talked a lot about this kind of stuff in the networking episode we did, and how it's all about how you present yourself. And for me, I think obviously when you are networking, those are mini interviews. It's maybe not with the person that might give you the job, but they are networking and interviewing. Like, what really is the difference there? Like, there is maybe not a formal interview where you're, you know, sitting down in front of somebody and they're asking you a list of questions that they have that HR has given them, but it is at the end of the day an interview. And I think what's important when it comes to interviewing, you can give me your thoughts, as the interviewee, is just to stand out, to show a bit of personality, and to try and, the same as what we said with networking, to try and connect with the person that you're talking to, rather than just trying to impress them and turn into like a talking version of your CV.
Yeah.
Which I think can be very easy. I was very lucky in the couple of episodes. Why do I keep saying interview an episode? I keep saying them in the wrong place. The few interviews that I did, I was very lucky, and I had very nice and kind of understanding and empathetic, I guess, interviewers. So they didn't just throw very random, weird questions at me. They did ask me questions, but they also tried to make conversation in between them. And that calmed me down so much. And, you know, they tried to, so when I would say something, they would say, you know, so how come you've done that? And they would try and build on like my answer and make it a conversation rather than just a list of questions. Yeah, I don't know what your kind of experience and stance and kind of feelings on interviews is.
Yeah. I mean, on an experience side, I have had interviews where they've been very kind of conversational and calming you down. And I've also had interviews where maybe even just at one point in the interview, somebody will log on and just ask you a load of technical questions, just like one after the other, with no kind of response or anything. And that's a bit... But I think what's important is not necessarily giving them the correct answer, but like you say, showing a bit of personality, showing that you can think on your feet. A lot of the times, I think a good interviewer, they're not going to be that interested in, unless it's like a technical interview where they need you to have a certain expertise in something. Of course, that can happen. But
yeah,
often they'll put you in a situation to see how you act under pressure. Something that I think is really important is showing that you can take not necessarily criticism, but suggestion, or if you give an answer to a question and they kind of pick on it or whatever, show that you can take input and not get all defensive. I mean, you can give your opinion, you can give your stance on things, because it shows that you're confident and that you can have a constructive conversation, but try not to get defensive. I think that's a big thing in any kind of feedback situation, be it an interview or a pitch or something like that. Show that you can take criticism and give constructive replies.
Yeah.
If you have an addition to what you said that you want to add, go for it. And if you want to say, that's really interesting, thank you, just say that. But in terms of recommendations for interviews, I think enthusiasm is by far the most important. Show that you are interested in the job, that you're willing to bring something, an energy to the company. And showing your personality, like you say.
Yeah, absolutely. I was reading, while doing research for this, I was reading just like different experiences and everything that people had. And one of them, someone said that they got asked the most random question at the very end of an interview that it felt really out of place. And they gave an answer. I think it might have been like one of like, what animal would you be, or something like that. And he got the job. And then afterwards, talking about it with the person who had interviewed him, he was like, and what was that question all about? And they were like, we didn't care at all what you answered. It was just to see how decisive you were and how quick you could kind of think on your feet. So that is also always really interesting. I think if you do get thrown these weird, you know, questions, it's like, for example, the last one I said to you that's just bizarre of what makes a salad. That is obviously something no one's ever thought about. So it's how fast can you build an argument that sounds believable? You know, I think that's just what it comes down to. And that they don't care if you say, well, it's got to have tomatoes or whatever. It's just, how are you communicating, and how are you, you know, obviously it depends what the job is, but I thought that was very interesting take on it, that we don't care the answer, it's how you answer it, not what you answer.
Yeah, and like you say, how quickly you build an argument. Not an argument, that's not the right word in English, is it?
No.
A defense for your idea.
Exactly. And kind of like stick to it as well, I guess. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, and if somebody challenges you on it, how do you react?
How do you Exactly. So I've put together a few like tips that I would say would be kind of good for giving a successful interview. And I'll be interested to see what you think and if you have anything to add or change. I think the first one is to know the employer and know yourself.
100%.
So not investigated, what's the word I'm looking for? Like researched who you're going to be working for, who you're taking. And if it can be the person sat in front of you as well as just the general company, then even better. Look them up on LinkedIn, whatever, because then that will give you kind of that space to connect and be like, oh, I saw that, you like this. And I don't know, then you can maybe try and connect or just bring it up, say, if one of the questions leads to it, be like, oh, well, I like, in your case, like rock climbing. Mm-hmm. And then that they also do. So you're hoping that might lead to something, A
conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And then be able to know yourself, to be able to say confidently why you think you would be a good asset to their team. That isn't just like the typical, I am organized and I am always on time. And, things that they've heard 1,000 times. Because at the end of the day, we have a friend in common who was shooting her shot at a very out there job, and when she showed me kind of I don't even think it was a CV, I think it was like more like a portfolio type thing that she was sending them. It had some very like different things that you maybe wouldn't expect, and it was basically just personal things. She had taken the extra time to add things in that showed her personality, which I think is just so important because they're seeing so many of these kind of things like all the time. So I thought that was interesting. It's also interesting how I have, since I got my first employee, I have been getting lots of people messaging me or emailing me or whatever, asking if we have any job openings. And they'll sell themselves in such a way. I think not once, like maybe it's happened like 5 times in the last 5 months. Like it hasn't been loads, but I don't think anyone has said anything original. It's very obvious they've copy and pasted that message to I don't know how many people. They've looked up branding studio or design studio or whatever, and they've just created Nox. Whining. Noxy. It's because they started barking outside. Noxy. I'm going to let him out. He's probably going to come back in a second.
Diaries of podcasting with a dog.
It's warm enough that I could leave the door open, so that leaves. That's that. It's so obvious that they just made a message that sells themselves in a like generic enough way they can just copy and paste to everyone. And then they'll say something like, oh, because I love your studio. And then they don't go into any detail about it. So you're like, you've put 0 effort into this. Like, I'll give you an answer of we're not looking for anybody right now, but I almost don't even want to do that. So it's, I think showing personality, which leads into the second point of tell your story. I've put, to again, just give them an insight into that you are a person, not just a number.
Yeah.
Interview number this.
Maybe to quickly go back onto your first point. One thing that I would always use when I was writing cover letters, which was a bit like interview prep, isn't it? Is you speak about the company. I would always use the same rule, which is you, me, us. So you speak about the company and why you're interested in that company. Like you say, it just shows that you have looked into the company and that you're really interested in working for them and putting in the energy to learn a little bit more. And then who I am, my experience, the kind of person I am, why it's good, why it's nice to work with me, blah, blah, blah. And then what we can do together. So what can I bring to your company, and what we can achieve as one. So same goes for the interview, like you say. So know the company, know yourself, and know what you could bring to that company. Even though it sounds so cliche, it shows such kind of determination from your side that you've really gone the extra mile and thought, okay, what could I bring to this company? What could they achieve with me as a team member? And just the energy you've put into thinking about that shows them something about you and about your personality.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, tell your story.
Yeah, tell your story. And the third thing I've put down is to not be afraid to ask questions. I feel like you can feel like you're, you know, the one getting interviewed and you don't want to ask anything and you feel like you should know maybe certain things or whatever. But I don't think there's anything wrong. I remember in my first ever interview, I wanted to ask so many things, but I was like, I just didn't think I could, you know, I was like, but it's fine. And again, I think it shows interest. It shows enthusiasm.
And it also shows, you know, your worth. Like, I'm not just going to work for any company. I need to know that you're also the company for me and that our objectives align and our values are similar. Otherwise, I might work for you for a couple of months and then realize it's not really for me.
Exactly.
So absolutely ask questions about the values. I think it's also really interesting to tell them your reason why. So why you've chosen your domain, why you want to work on this thing. Other than I need to pay my bills, what motivates you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's really interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine who's done quite a lot of interviews and she was talking about, you know, that over half of them, she ended up being the one that said, no, I don't want this. And it was because in the interview, normally something had come up that she was like, oh, that wasn't part of what you were advertising. Or, you know, just something like having a bit more of an insight into the culture at the workspace or the values. And she was just like, no, this isn't something somewhere that I want to be. And then they maybe got back in touch saying, oh, we'd love to have you. And she's had to say, well, I don't want to be there, which is interesting.
Too bad.
Yeah, too bad. And the last thing I've put is to end strong. To just end, I think, the interview, try and make sure that you somehow end in a way that you're memorable. And I think maybe, although this I've gone back and forth, I don't know if it's a good idea or not, to kind of try and get out of them what's the next thing that might happen? You know, when are they gonna when can you expect to hear back from them? If this interview goes well, what would the next steps be? I don't know. I think it would probably depend on how the rest of the interview went and how you read the situation. But yeah, I think just end strong in a way that hopefully throughout the whole interview, you've done something that they'll remember you by. But yeah, to make sure you end confidently and excited.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I like the suggestion that if you can't really think of anything else, if you've already given your reason why and what you can do together and why you're looking forward to working with them, blah, blah, blah. If you've gone through all of that, then a good way, like you say, to end strong is say, okay, when can I expect feedback from you? Would you like me to follow up with anything?
Yeah.
If it went really well, is there anything that I can look into in preparation for this job?
Exactly. So, yeah. So yes, those are some of the tips. I think something I wanted to touch on very briefly, because we'll definitely be doing an episode about this in the future, is how something that can show up a lot in interviews, especially early on in your interviews, like first interviews that you do, can be imposter syndrome. When you get asked the questions of, and why should you get this job? And what makes you different? And you might be like, nothing. I feel like, imposter syndrome can definitely play a big role in it. And that's why I feel like the more interviews you do, I guess it's like anything in life, the more you practice, you know, the better you get at anything. And interviews is just a practice at the end of the day. Like I've got friends that have gone on interviews for jobs that they didn't even want. Because they were just like, for when the real interview does come along, I want to have done enough interviews that I feel like I'm ready.
Yeah.
So that they can get to just go through the process enough that it doesn't feel scary anymore. And that kind of imposter syndrome, because like networking, at the end of the day, is being able to sell yourself and be confident in yourself. And I think that only comes with practice. Like I think it's unnatural to hope that your first interview straight out of university is going to be super duper and you're going to be amazing and you're going to nail unless, which would be amazing, they had classes about how to prepare for an interview, which is the kind of thing that would be amazing, not just at university, but at school already as well. Why not? Because so many people do have to do interviews have to work to be able to put themselves through university. So why isn't it something that we're taught? Because the only way to do it is just, practicing. And if you're lucky and you somehow, for whatever reason, maybe just are better at talking to people, or you've maybe had to just do more public speaking or whatever, and you might have that confidence and that, kind of not get stressy, nervous, whatever, that makes your mind go blank, then you're lucky. If you're not, then you might be perfect for a job and you don't get it because you did a bad interview, which is just,
Absolutely. I think working on being able to just talk and preparing well, so know what you're good at. If you do look into the company, look into yourself, who you are, I was going to speak French then. Even if you don't have any experience and you've just started uni, or it's a job for after high school, or you've always got some personality trait, some part of you somewhere is interesting, be it your creativity, maybe you're particularly good at organizing things, maybe you're good at telling people to bugger off, everything has a use.
Yeah, absolutely.
So figure out what those things are, what you're good at, or what you enjoy, and then you'll more often than not be able to weave that into an interview. And if you're not very good at some things, like talking, play with that. Say, listen, interviews aren't my strong point. Just keep that in mind
get to
as
know
I speak
me,
to
okay?
you. Yeah. But I am confident in these other things.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last kind of point I have before moving on to the next kind of interviews is how our answers change once you have not just been doing interviews and such, but once you've started working. And why is it? Is it because you're more confident? Is it because you have more stories to tell? You have more experience to draw on? Is it because that imposter syndrome isn't there as much because you think, no, I have had a job in this before, so why can't I get another job? Like, why is it that we do become better at giving interviews, and also that why our answers change? Like we are like that little game we did at the beginning of your 16-year-old self versus now. Is it just because we grow as people? Is it because all of the above?
I mean, I think if it is after having a couple of years of experience, or even just a couple of different jobs, you do get to know yourself a bit better. You've been put in different situations. You understand what helps, what doesn't, where you've been more valuable for a company or for a certain position. And you just get better at identifying what you're good at, I guess. Yeah. And then that brings you confidence on those subjects. And you can give more insight into who you are and how you can help the company grow or get better.
Absolutely. Right. And before we move on, I've got a little horror story of an interview sent in. So I haven't actually finished reading through it. So let's see. Went for a job interview in a big city hospital. The interviewer was a male. I walked in and sat down, a bit nervous but excited. He's looking at me like the cat's who's got the cream. Is that how you say that? The cat's who's got the cream. All big smiles, wide-eyed and overly enthusiastic for me to take the job with an immediate start of that afternoon. No reference check, police check, or WWCC check. Any idea? Something American, probably. I tell him I would love to take the job. I can start right away. I walk outside, all excited about how I pulled off the impossible. I feel a breeze blow on my tummy. I look down and my shirt only has one bottom button buttoned up. The rest are still undone, leaving my boobs fully exposed. I'm a size E. I didn't even know that was a size. So lots of boobie exposed.
How do you do that?
How did you not notice? I was so nervous before the interview, I had forgotten to do my shirt up. I still blush and cringe whenever I see a man in a white shirt, sleeves rolled up. That must be the interviewer. It was almost 30 years ago now. Feels like yesterday. I never did take that job in the end.
Oh my God.
I was curious if she'd owned it and just walked in being like, you ain't getting any boobs today. Or if she'd been like, nope. I don't think I would have been able to walk back in there, to be honest.
Oh, no. God. Yeah, I've heard a couple of horror stories of interviewers asking personal questions that they shouldn't. Like, what is your relationship status? Are you planning on having kids?
Are you planning on having kids is one of the ones I saw like as an inappropriate question come up too many times. It's just, yeah. And
even like people, our generation, I've had friends from university tell me that they've had this situation with an interviewer. I just didn't. I didn't think that could possibly still be a thing.
Yeah. No, in one of the stories that I saw that someone had posted when I was doing the research, they were saying how the interviewer had asked something along the lines of, do you like children or do you plan on having children or something like that? And she kind of like, this was a bit like, and they immediately said, it's just to know more about you. It's not going to affect anything. And it's like, if you want to know more about me, like, is that really what you need to know? Like, yeah. Or just taking it like, religious. There was a lot of people saying, that they'd gone and asked like if they were religious, if they did go to church regularly, all that kind of stuff that you're like, again, I guess it could maybe in some very extreme cases depend on the job, but overall, what does
I mean, if you're interviewing to be a childcare person, then if they ask you if you like kids, it's probably something to do with the job. But if you're interviewing to be a digital marketing person,
exactly.
Probably none of their business.
Probably none of their business if you like kids or not. Yeah. Okay. So the next section is interviews as the interviewer. But before we jump in, we're going to do another little game called red flag or green flag. So for this, I asked Saoirse to prepare a few interview scenarios that you might be in the more kind of corporate sense, that I have to say if they are a green flag, red flag, or beige flag, if doesn't depend. And I'm gonna then throw to her more kind of the questions that might come up in an interview as an entrepreneur, which is the last thing that we'll get to in this episode. So would you like to start?
Sure. Okay, so the first one, I mean, this is an exact question, but we could generalize it to pretty much anybody situation. Okay. So the first one is, they ask you whether you enjoy skiing, and then in parenthesis, as there is good skiing in the area.
Could be a green flag.
Do you want to elaborate?
Well, obviously, so again, it depends so much on the context of the whole interview, but...
So these are all examples of, or actually kind of... But imagine they're an interview that I'm in or interviewing for, as in I'm the interviewee, and it's for a job as a material scientist or an engineer or something.
Yeah. I mean, it could be, if it's not thrown in too much of a weird way, them trying to get to know you as a person rather than just a person that's going to, just as a worker there, and they're wanting to be more interested in your hobbies and kind of your lifestyle in a not too intrusive way. I feel like something like skiing is something that a big part of the population does. They're not asking you something really weird like, do you do, I don't know, there's this thing in America called pickleball, like what the hell's that? They're not asking something really obscure. They're not like, oh, do you like to go hunting? That would be for me red flag. But I think skiing, there's a lot of good skiing in the area, but then maybe it could sound like they're asking you out.
Oh God, no. So let's not take that out of context before I say that it was a big green flag for me.
Okay, yeah.
Good, so this for me was a green flag. Partly it was a way to calm me down at the beginning of the interview, or just to kind of, get me loosen up and understand a little bit more. For me, it was a green flag because it showed that they were interested in who I am as a person, and that they're well aware that I'm a human being that's interested in the job, not only for the job itself, but maybe because where it's based.
Exactly.
Will I be happy in that position, as at that point I was going to have to move for that position to Switzerland, which is where I am now. So for me, it was a big green flag. They're human beings. They're not too set in stone on, we have to speak professional. We have to speak, only about work. And they're interested in the kind of person I am. And it showed that they themselves were fun people that I would probably enjoy having as colleagues.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was number one.
Okay.
So the second one is, during the interview, the company mentions a high employee turnover. So maybe they mentioned that they've had a few different people for this position in the recent past and they're looking for someone new.
Red flag. Can't keep an employee. I'm like, I thought of a very similar one for me, which is something like, oh, we've worked with other companies before, but we can't quite get it right, or something like that. It's like, oh, so you're a difficult client. In your case, it's like, oh, so you're maybe don't treat your employees right, or why? Because again, it can depend on the job. If you're talking something like, I don't know, being a what they called, like when you're going to work at a campsite as a manager or whatever they're called, you know, like that's obviously normal, whatever. But in normal circumstances, I would say red flag.
Yeah, this is something that I don't think I was quite aware of the link when I first started taking interviews. But I'd say that when you hear that a company has quite a high turnover, in general, it's because maybe the management isn't great, or the position isn't as it was advertised, or things like this. Yeah. So for me now, that would be a bit of a red flag. Next one is simply being on time for the interview.
I think that's good. That's green flag. Yeah. It's kind of, I guess, to be expected. You know, you would hope.
Yeah.
But saying that, I've seen so many stories of people saying that like interviewer just literally like forgot about them and that kind of stuff. Like they would show up for an interview and then the interviewer took half an hour and then walked through the door with like a takeaway coffee and they just come back from lunch or something. So yeah, I guess like to be expected, but at the same time, apparently it's not that common. It can be quite common.
I mean, I think it shows that they're taking you seriously, right?
Taking you seriously, absolutely. Yeah.
And even if it's for an internship or anything, you're going to want them to take you just as seriously as anything else that they do at the company, any other meeting. So for me, I think it's a big tell if, even if they're, 10 minutes late or 5 minutes late and don't say anything about it or don't give any real reason, then it's kind of,
yeah,
not very organized.
Yeah. Again, it just doesn't set you up for like a nice space to do the interview because you already start to feel a bit like nervous or whatever. So yeah, it doesn't
absolutely
help you.
I mean, sitting in the waiting room for 5-10 minutes is the longest 5-10 minutes of your life. And then the last one is kind of along the same lines, which I think is often the case when it comes to interview situations, is a long or lack of response time. So taking a long time to give you any feedback on whether you got the job or just not telling you anything at all and you having to contact them to get a response.
Yeah. I mean,
even if it is positive.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I would say obviously red flag, but I think it's like you kind of expect to only hear from them if it's positive. You almost don't expect. I feel like from what a lot of my friends have told me, like they do an interview and they very often say, like, I don't even expect, like, it didn't go well, so I'm not going to hear back from them. And I think that's just so rude.
Yeah,
so rude.
I agree. I think they should always reply.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're a human being that's...
Exactly. Right. I'm going to read you mine. So, number one situation. You ask about budget and they reply, we're hoping you'll tell us what's fair.
I'm going to say red flag. But I'm also going to say, I think I've done this to people. And
the thing is, like, I feel like people think they're being good. Like, they think it's a good thing to say because they don't want to say, we're asking all this for you, but our budget is X and I know that it's low. So they're kind of thinking if they tell me, but it puts you in such a horrible position. It's like, no. What is your budget? And I will tell you what I can do for that budget, not the other way around.
Yeah.
It's happening. But yeah, it's the tricky one. And I don't feel like people always do it in a bad way. And that's where it's like, but yeah, red flag.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I guess it goes into the conversation of pricing that we'll probably go into more in detail. But
yeah,
it is a situation that I think as a freelancer, you're always going to have to ask that question. And as a company, when you don't know much about that kind of work that you're asking for, it's so hard to, but then I guess you should fix a budget yourself, see how much you're willing to spend, not just minimum. It's always minimum.
Yeah.
And give them a number and trust that I think
they're not going to take advantage of that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which I get as well. And that's why it is more complicated when you are, when it is a business and all that. So yes. But one that I get all the time, it's like, so what's your budget? And they're like, well, what do you think? And then, no, what's your budget?
How much can you spend?
Yeah, exactly. And then we'll figure it out.
If it's 50 euros, then maybe I'm going to spend my time on something else.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, next one. The client says, we just need a quick logo, nothing fancy.
I guess that shows that they'll probably underestimate the work. Because a quick logo, I mean, what's a quick logo?
Yeah.
You can have a simple logo, rather than maybe an intricate logo.
Yeah.
But who are you to judge how much time that's going to take?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And also, actually, I don't take on, I have so many people contact me saying, oh, I need a logo. Can you do that? And it's like, no, I'm sorry. Like, we do branding, and inside of the branding is a logo. But like, it takes so much time to get to know someone enough to do a logo. And it's just like,
it's not worth
there's
it.
so many people.
So interesting, yeah.
And how much would you charge? Like, what, 50, 80, 100 max for a logo? Like, it's just not worth the time. But yeah, so many. Oh, it's just a quick logo. It's like, yeah, okay, cool. Find someone else to go do it then, or do it yourself and see how long it takes you.
Show me what you've got from a quick.
Yeah. Right. Next one is they ask, what does your process look like?
I'd say that's a green flag.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, that's a green flag, because they're not just saying, they're allowing you space to be, to, you know, say, this is how we work. And they're kind of putting that trust into you rather than being like, no, this is how we're going to do things, you know? So it kind of gives you that kind of, you're like, okay, they trust me enough to say, okay, this is how we work and this is how we do it. So yeah, it gives you that extra confidence.
Yeah, and I think also with creative work, there's this part of it's really hard to understand exactly. It's not like I want you to sew a bag for me and I will receive the bag with these exact dimensions. It's I want you to create something, and how hard is it to get that right first time? But how much can they expect to be able to ask from you once you've started the creative process? Like how many iterations should they expect and are fair, you know?
Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just, it is like, because you do get people saying like, this is how it's going to be. And this, and it's like, where is it like you're the client, but then it's also my job, you know, it can be hard to find that balance. So when people do come in and say, you know, how do you normally go about this and how can we adapt to you? That was one that I think I've put it in actually, because I've made a list of red flags and green flags inside of my job. And I think I put it in as a green flag when people do just say, like, what can I do to make the process easier or something like that? You know, I'll see exactly what it was. But, you know, when the people say that kind of stuff, it's like, you know, they're not coming in and saying, you know, this is how we're going to do things. Well, and it's like, you have no idea, you know, this is what we do. Let us take the reins. It's fine. But yeah, it's hard. And I do understand that, especially when you don't know someone. You don't know that they're just going to take advantage. And the last one is, we don't have a brief yet, but we know exactly what we want.
No, you don't. Very red flag.
Very red flag, but it happens so much. We know exactly what we want. It's fine. We don't need to send you a brief. It's like, no, you do need to send me a brief. You really, really do.
It's great for you to know what you want, but I need to know what you want.
I need to know exactly in a nice, concise way, if possible. So, that leads us into a nice little power dynamic change into when you are the one giving an interview. Have you ever been the interviewer?
I mean, I've been in on interviews. I've never led an interview myself. And I've been included in very few interviews. And it's usually to either give a technical opinion. So maybe it's the COO that's doing the interview, just checking how the person thinks and how they deal with things. And then maybe they'll ask me to come in and ask a few technical questions just to evaluate if they have any knowledge or experience on that subject technically, or just as a second opinion on the personality. So as a future team member, even if they're more senior than I am, to evaluate, will I enjoy working with them?
Yeah. And what would you say then, what do you think people kind of look for when giving an interview? What would you say is like the number one thing that you would think, okay, this might be a good person, this might be a good candidate for the job, this one not? Because I haven't ever been the interviewer in a traditional sense. I have an employee, but I knew her previously. So we didn't go through the whole formal interview process. We did sit down and have a conversation about what it would all look like and et cetera, et cetera. But it wasn't I didn't start interviewing people for the position, you know, I didn't do that. So I haven't got too much experience in this.
I think the main points for me would be understanding what motivates them, why they're interested in this particular job. just to make sure that we're aligned on
Yeah.
the values. I think that's a big thing for me. Like, are they just motivated in the salary, which is fine in some cases, or are they motivated by the mission? Also, in that case, I would end up being their manager to understand how I'm going to be able to get them on the right tracks and have them be happy in this position. I think that's one big one. I think communication is a big one. So I would struggle to hire somebody that I don't feel there's very fluid communication with.
Yeah.
Obviously, it depends on the position, but...
It depends on the position, but I feel like that's being able to communicate properly is always going to be... When you're working in a team...
Exactly.
I think it's just, you know, how many positions are there where it is just you by yourself? It's not that many.
Yeah, and I mean, even when you're working on something technical... Yeah. in your corner and everything, you're still going to need to be able to be briefed, and you're still going to need to be able to get feedback and give your view on things. And yeah, I think communication is a big one. So just seeing how they interact with you on any kind of subject
level.
Yeah. I think they would be two main ones for me, and then if they need technical background. But I think most anything technical can be learned. Maybe not on a very senior level, but I don't think that should be the number one important factor when you hire someone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that can be very interesting, obviously always depending on what the position is, but if it's someone that's going to be part of your team, even if it is kind of like below you, I think something that can be very interesting is hiring someone that you can align on with like values and such, but not have... But that they're they have different opinions, different views on things, and I think that can like challenge you in a really good way. I think that can be somewhere where you can, the project, whatever it is, the job, whatever it is that's at hand that you're working on together, can really grow if you get someone that's not exactly like you. You know, just because do you hire someone just because you get on because you feel like you could be best friends?
It helps.
It helps, and obviously you want someone that's you're going to be able to work with and communicate with and all that. But I think if you can have, you know, just slightly different perspective on things and values, and not values, sorry,
absolutely,
but like opinions and stuff, I think it can be interesting. And what do you think, I guess we've kind of already touched on all this, but what do you think makes a great candidate beyond just a good CV? If you were to have
proactive person, determined person, get things done kind of person, and somebody that is motivated for the right reasons.
Yeah,
I think that's what makes a good candidate for me.
Yeah. I'm gonna do a little story of someone that was doing an interview and just had a bizarre interview that I thought was amusing. I was interviewing for a website graphical design position once. The guy walked in, we briefly introduced ourselves, and I asked, according to your resume, you seem to be fascinated by data. The guy literally went on talking for 20 minutes, none of it making much sense. I tried to cut in several times, but he kept saying, just one more thing, followed by increasingly bizarre behavior like slapping himself on the forehead. Finally, I blurted out, do you know what job you're applying for? He admitted that he did not. I told him it was website graphical design. He thanked me for my time and said he didn't think he was a good fit and left. What? Like, what? What? How? And like, that's exactly what not to do. Just talk about yourself for 20 minutes straight. I did read so many stories of people saying that their interviewers were just like talking to a brick wall. Like, it was like talking to a machine rather than a person. And I think, yeah, like I said, like all the interviews I have had, I've been so lucky that it's been with nice, empathetic people who like, you know, we're trying to make the situation easier and not just like quick firing. So questions at me that made no sense. So yeah, I think as an interviewer, I think the best thing you can do is just try and make the person feel comfortable, open up and get to know them properly. Like they're there because you've seen the CV and you like it. So you're there to then see if they're going to be a good fit for the team or not.
Yeah.
So kind of try and give them a bit of that vibe before they start. Yeah, because I had another question for you. If you had interviewed someone before, of a follow-up of, do you enjoy interviewing people? But obviously you haven't.
I'm trying to think about the situations that I have been in, because I have had to like ask questions. I always think it's interesting to hear people tell you about themselves. I don't know if I would say I enjoy interviews particularly. I don't really like putting somebody in a situation where they're not very comfortable, and I think it's hard to do an interview without doing that. Yeah. But maybe something I would enjoy would be trying to, you know, tell them, hey, I'm just here to meet you as a person. Yeah. Chill out. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. All right. And interviews when you're self-employed. This is our last section inside of this episode.
Ooh.
So yeah, it's kind of interviews when you're self-employed. It's almost like we had a little chat about this, about how every time I meet with someone, whether it be because we've met in a networking thing or whatever, the next step is always to have a meeting online or in person for them to tell me about what they need, for me to tell them about how I could help them with those needs. But I mean, there's obviously normally been a bit of a pre something before that. Like I know exactly what area inside of what I want to help them with it is. But it's almost like you're interviewing each other, because it's not just they're choosing, like the last kind of situation like this I was in. And they literally said, like, at some point during the conversation, they were like, I mean, not that this is an interview, because they asked me quite a few questions in a row. And then they kind of like realized and kind of laughed and said, not that this is an interview. And I was like, well, I mean, you said you're meeting with other people and you're looking for, you know, okay, so it's not to be a part of your team in office, but you're still going to be paying me monthly. Like it is still, it's interesting. And then obviously there's the other part as well of making sure that, is it interviewing them or interviewing kind of yourself when you're in that situation of like, is this a client I want to work with? Is this company aligned with the kind of, you know, values that we have at the studio? Yeah. So it can be quite an interesting like dynamic, and it's like, is it an interview? Is it not? I don't even know what to call it. But it's almost like it turns into from like, what do you want me to do in this job or whatever, into who do you want me to be today? You know, like what do you need from me today? It's very different. It's quite interesting. And then there's also the whole thing of, you're not getting employed as an employee inside of their business. So it's almost more like a collaboration status where you're working with another company as a company rather than an employee. But at the end of the day, they're the client and they still pay you. So like,
but
there
I
is
mean,
a certain
like you
hierarchy.
said before, you have certain red flags. So you are testing them as a client. Is this somebody that's going to be worth my time? Is this somebody that's going to be able to collaborate in the process and not be in a problem and take too much of my time and understand how I work? So yeah, I guess it is a two-way interview. But then again, it always is, right? With interviews. It's always two ways.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really important for people not to forget, is that just as if a company offers you a trial period, it's also a trial period for you to see if the company works for you. Does the team work for you? Does the management work for you? Does the environment, you know, you should, like you say, you shouldn't be afraid to ask questions, because just as they're interviewing you, you're also getting to know the company for the first time, and showing that interest in the situation that you're going to be in shows them that you're serious about the job. Like you want to be sure that you're in the most comfortable working environment possible so that you can do your best work.
Yeah, definitely. And I think some people come prepared that it is like that you're coming in as a professional who's like I say, like business to business, helping them grow and stuff. Others do see you as an employee, and then they're the boss, and you know, even though it's like, but yeah, it can be definitely a bit murky. But like you say, there's red flags you look for in those initial meetings, and even the first month is always, well, I say first month, this is when it's a job that's going to be on a monthly period. Obviously, if it's like a branding project or a one-off like big project, then you kind of suck it up because it's one off and that's it, and you kind of hope you never, like, if you do kind of started the project, then you just kind of do what you got to do. But there are definitely red flags that you kind of get to see immediately that you're like, yeah, no, this person is gonna have to find someone else. And I've written down a few of my favorites. So these are red flags that you sometimes at the beginning, but actually most of them are probably more, some of them are like just when you think that you're on the right vibe with someone and then suddenly they turn around and say these kind of things that you're like. So red flags that I see all the time as a business owner is the client asks you to hop on a quick call, which is one of my most annoying things. They just think that you are there all the time, available. Yeah. And then it normally turns into a 90-minute deep dive with zero boundaries. The amount of times I have worked as a therapist, rather than, what I am, because they start telling me their problems and what, and it's just like, what's happening? So yeah, hop on a quick call is something that I'm like, no. Let's set up a meeting.
Yeah.
That's going to go from 9 to 9:30.
Oh, it's so true though. It's so true. Like that's part of knowing your worth, isn't it? You know, my time is worth money, and I'm not going to make you pay for it for this first call, but I'm going to set limits in time.
No, absolutely. In everyone's contract, it includes especially when it's a monthly thing, it includes X amount of meetings a month, you know? For like bigger projects, it can be a bit just depending on the client, but yeah, you have to set that boundary, because if not, it just actually goes crazy. You mentioned timelines, and they respond with, "Oh, we were hoping to launch this by Monday, and it's a Thursday." That's always the best when they're like, oh, but can't this just happen like as soon as possible? And it's like,
yeah, it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? It's you're not there just for them.
And that's something that people really struggle with. It's like, you're paying me like, I don't know, whatever. If there's a social media client that's paying like 500 a month, and you're like, that's nothing. Like, it's not, you honestly can't actually believe that you're my only client. But they expect to be your only client, so it can be a bit, navigating that can definitely be interesting. And then another one is they ask, are you available evenings or weekends just in case? Which is one I get all the time. And I do have to be very mindful of who's asking that, because most of the time it just like, it pisses me off. But then there are some clients who I understand do work full-time jobs. And that maybe the time that they're trying to set up their second business, or whatever, and what they're trying, the work they're doing with me is, like I say, to work on their, they're working for someone, but they want to start up their own business, and that's what I'm helping them with. So then they need to meet up on weekends, evenings, whenever. I've had meetings at 9:00 at night with a client, but that's specific cases, because I know that they, it's worth it because that client, whatever. And then obviously they get charged extra. I'm not working weekends for no one.
Of course.
But so many just businesses are like, oh, but like, just in case, like, if we send you something on Friday, like, can we be sure that it's going to be ready on Monday? It's like, no.
I think it's really interesting on these different points. So working weekends, jumping on a quick call. I think it's so important. I mean, obviously that shows about the client, but I think it's so important to defend your worth and defend your working schedule and your time. Like, often is a client going to ask for less? They're always going to ask for more.
Always.
Just to be confident in saying, no, I'm not available. And it just shows that you are a professional and you have other things to work on and you're organized. It's not in any way does that in no way does that play against you, unless you've promised something and you haven't delivered.
Exactly. And we have a client that we've now been working with them for about 5 months, and they are a very cool client and they're very involved in everything, but they are constantly testing our limits. They will constantly ask, oh, and can we do this? Can we include this? And the amount of times that I've had to answer saying, that's not included in the contract. If you'd like us to do that, oh, but are you sure? Yeah, I am. Here's the contract. It's not included in the price that you're paying a month. Like, it's just not. Okay. Like, the weirdest one we got was that we got asked from this client if we could, they were having hosting an event, and if we could organize that for them. And it was like, no, we are not event planners. Like, that is just nowhere in our job description. I've never done that. And no, I will not be organizing your catering. And, you know, what if something goes wrong? I'm not taking that responsibility. But they were like, can't you? And I was like, no, we can be there to take photos of the event for your social media. That's fine. But no, we will not organize the event. But there are just some people that will just try it. They will just try it. And from how they were asking the question, I am 99% sure that they were expecting that to fall into what they were already paying as well. I don't think in any point were they thinking of paying extra for it. It's like, what's wrong with people? But on the flip side, I'm going to share some green flags that we see all the time as well. So things like that they value a contract and are happy to sign it before you begin. And they're like, you won't do any work before we sign this contract, which is just like, yes. So many clients get weirded out when I say there's going to be a contract. And it's like,
yeah, that's such a red flag.
Yeah, such a red flag. They ask, what do you need from us to make this successful? Which is just, again, as what I mentioned before, is like, it's so, rather than you have to chase them up all the time, because with what we do, most of the time we need stuff from the client because we don't know them. We don't, you know, when you start at a company, you get given a certain thing so that you can start to get to know the company. Well, for us, it's the same. So when people openly say, what do you need from us and where can we send whatever you need? It's like, oh, thank you. And the last one is they talk about realistic goals, not vague ideas like going viral. Which is just, yeah.
So like, what do you want? Numbers that, you know, specific numbers.
Exactly. What do you want us to do with your social media? We want to go viral. And it's like, great.
Are 3 viewers considered viral to you?
So yeah, that's a little bit kind of an insight into kind of working with clients and stuff and interviews and all that kind of stuff when you're
as a freelancer,
self-employed. Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like how it is 2 ways and how you are always interviewing a client just as the client is interviewing you as a freelancer.
Yeah.
Do you still consider yourself, is that still what you call yourself, freelancer? I mean, you have a company now.
Yeah, I think it's normally more self-employed, I think, which is a funny word. No one would employ me, so I employed myself.
Yeah. So, but I think it's really interesting to take that back into the corporate world and remind people that you're not the only one in that interview. Exactly.
It should be both ways, always, and that you should be valuing, is this still worth it for me? Even in the corporate world. So yes, to finish off, I wanted to ask you if you, in all your interviews you've done, have you ever had any interview prep rituals? Whether it be as an interviewee or interviewer, do you do anything to prep so you don't feel nervous? Is there any like things that you would do to... Yeah.
The answer is no. Apart from get way too nervous than I should.
Yeah.
I actually recently gave a presentation, which is totally off topic, but I gave a presentation and it was online, so I took my shoes off. And I feel like that made a big difference.
No,
how comfortable I felt and how, you know, it kind of calmed me down a bit. So I feel like that's something I could maybe do for an interview if it were online.
Something that I did a lot more so when I was going to do like talk in public or anything, like at uni, if I was ever going to do any presentations or anything, was always exercise beforehand, like get all the nervous energy out.
That's such a good idea.
And then obviously shower and make yourself look presentable, but not run to the presentation. But yeah, like I do exercise beforehand. I always felt it helped so much. Like I just felt so much more chilled out. And I feel like so in one of the interviews, because most of the interviews I've done, it's funny, I haven't been for what it's been for jobs to get me through uni. So it's not been, you know, ones that, the only one that I did do, which was to be a graphic designer inside of a company, I did that. I went to do some exercise beforehand before showing up at the interview because I was so nervous.
Oh.
And again, it didn't even really matter that much because it was an internship in the summer for 3 months.
I mean, it's always a big deal when you go through it, isn't it? No matter what the stakes are. Yeah. Also, something I heard in a TED talk, I believe, was the power pose. And this is something that's been proven that if you pull the power pose, which is anything like hands on your hips, or I think if you put your arms up in the air or something like that, it's like confident kind of pose that a Superman would pull.
Yeah.
apparently that if you do that for maybe 2 minutes before going into a situation, whether that be an interview or a presentation, it gets your confident juices flowing. And obviously interviews are big about confidence. So
yeah, absolutely.
I'd say that would be a good ritual.
Look at yourself in the mirror with the power pose going, you will get this job. And if you don't, it's their loss.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, interviews. I think this is one that we would love to hear
other people's
stories and have people come on and tell us experiences, tips, anything and everything to do with interviews, because we are definitely new to that area. But yeah, we would love. So if we can do a follow-up to this episode with some people calling in, giving us their stories, that would be so much fun. I would absolutely love
I'm
that.
seeing a friend this weekend that works in human resources and recruiting. So maybe
definitely
I can have a little word with her.
Interviews part 2. Absolutely. I would love that. See how much of what we said was, she was like, she
worth
might
anything.
say like, absolutely not. What are you guys talking about? Amazing. Okay, well, yeah. So if you would like to call in and let us know and share with us a story that you've had in an interview as an interviewee or interviewer, we would love to know. You can send us a message on our social media, We Will Manage, or to our email, wewillmanagepodcast at gmail.com, I believe. And until then.
And also stick around for our next, don't stick around. Come back and see us for our next episode. Which will be on the subject of workplace dynamics.
Yes.
So that's kind of a continuation of our last episode in terms of management, but more focused on what happens at the office and different subjects like flexible timetables, home office, all of these juicy subjects that we all like to discuss.
Yes. So we'll see you.
Thank you for listening.
Next Thursday for that. Bye.
Ciao.